In the late 1500s, sailors landed on a tiny island and found birds that walked straight up to them. Didn't run, didn't hide, didn't even flinch. They simply reached down and picked them up. 70 years later, every one of those birds was gone. Forever. And here's the disturbing part. They didn't go extinct because they were hunted too much. They went extinct because they trusted the wrong species. In 1598, a small fleet of Dutch ships ran aground on a remote island in the Indian Ocean called Mauritius. The sailors were exhausted, sunburned, starving. Fresh food had run out weeks ago. Their rations were crawling with insects. Their water tasted like rot. So when they staggered onto the beach, they weren't expecting much. Maybe coconuts. Maybe a few seabirds they could scare into nets. What they found instead felt like a hallucination. Strange, plump birds wandered straight up to them, not cautiously, not nervously, casually. They didn't fly away. They didn't panic. They didn't even seem to recognize danger. The sailors just stood there, staring. Then one of them bent down and grabbed one. The bird didn't struggle, didn't peck, didn't scream. It just let it happen. They called the birds dodos. And in that moment, the dodo bird's fate was sealed. At first, nobody thought much of it. Sailors had been hunting island birds for centuries. It was normal. It was survival. But something about these birds was wrong. They couldn't fly. They walked slowly. They nested on the ground. And worst of all, they had absolutely no fear of humans. To the sailors, it felt like the birds were designed to be eaten. But what they didn't know was that they were meeting a species that had evolved in total isolation for millions of years. And that isolation had made the dodo perfectly adapted for a world that no longer existed. Mauritius had no land predators, no big cats, no snakes, no large mammals. So the dodo never needed to fly, never needed to run, never needed to be afraid. Over time, flight became unnecessary and energetically expensive. So evolution did what it always does. It optimized. The dodo became heavier. Its wing shrank, its bones thickened, its legs strengthened for walking, not escaping. It became calm, slow, ground-dwelling, in a paradise with no danger. And for thousands of years, it worked. Then humans arrived, and with them came something far more dangerous than guns. They brought rats, pigs, dogs, monkeys. The dodo laid its eggs on the ground, soft shells, easy to find, easy to eat. Within a few years, entire generations of chicks were being wiped out before they ever hatched. The dodos weren't just being hunted. They were being erased. Here's what makes this extinction especially brutal. Humans didn't even like eating dodos very much. Sailors described the meat as tough, greasy, bland. They called the birds stupid, ugly, useless, and yet they killed them anyway. Not out of hunger, but because it was easy. This wasn't a single catastrophic event. There was no meteor, no volcanic eruption, no great fire. It was slow, quiet, almost invisible. A few birds killed here, a few nests destroyed there. Each year fewer chicks survived. Each year the population shrank, and nobody noticed. To understand why the dodo never stood a chance, you have to understand its world. Step back about 8 million years. Mauritius is a volcanic island newly risen from the sea. Over time, it becomes a lush, green paradise. Dense forests, freshwater streams, no predators. Life here evolves in a bubble. With no threats, animals don't waste energy on fear. They don't waste energy on speed. They don't waste energy on wings. They become trusting. They become slow. They They become gentle. The dodo wasn't stupid. It was peaceful. Evolution prepares you for yesterday's threats, not tomorrow's disasters. For millions of years, the dodo's strategy was perfect. Then humans arrived. And every single one of those adaptations became a death sentence. Let's talk scale for a moment. The dodo stood about 3 feet tall. It weighed around 40 to 50 pounds. That's roughly the size of a large turkey. It had a massive hooked beak, tiny wings, strong legs. It looked awkward, comical, like a bird designed by accident, but everything about it made sense in a predator-free world. Most animals learn fear quickly. Touch a hot stove once, and you never do it again. But the dodo never evolved fear circuitry for large mammals, because there had never been any. So when humans arrived, the dodo didn't categorize them as predators. It categorized them as scenery, like trees, like rocks, like clouds. Imagine standing in a forest. A creature 3 feet tall walks up to you, looks at your shoes, tilts its head, and waits. That's what sailors described. Not fleeing, not hiding, waiting. But hunting alone didn't wipe them out. The real killers were the animals humans brought. Rats climbed into nests and ate eggs. Pigs trampled nesting sites. Dogs chased adult birds. Monkeys stole chicks. The dodo had no defense. It never needed one. Within just a few decades, the breeding population collapsed. By the time scientists even realized what was happening, it was already too late. The last confirmed sighting of a dodo was in 1662. Less than 70 years after humans first set foot on Mauritius, the dodo was gone forever. No dramatic final battle. No heroic last stand. Just silence. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The dodo didn't go extinct because it was weak. It went extinct because it was too perfectly adapted to a peaceful world. And that's what makes this story disturbing. Because the dodo didn't fail, the world changed. Think about that. For millions of years, the dodo's survival strategy worked flawlessly. Then, one invasive species arrived and erased it from reality. We like to imagine extinctions as dramatic. Meteors, ice ages, volcanoes. But sometimes extinction looks like this. Sailors stepping onto a beach. And here's the deeper layer most people miss. The dodo's extinction wasn't just about hunting. It was about ecological collapse. The forests changed. New species disrupted food chains. Seeds stopped spreading. Plants vanished. The entire island ecosystem reorganized itself. The dodo wasn't just a victim. It was a keystone species. When it disappeared, the island never returned to what it was. Even today, Mauritius still hasn't fully recovered. Some plants that evolved with the dodo can no longer reproduce naturally. They were waiting for a bird that will never come back. So when people laugh at the dodo, they're laughing at the wrong thing. They're laughing at a creature that trusted the wrong species. The dodo didn't go extinct because it couldn't adapt fast enough. No species can adapt that fast. It went extinct because evolution works on geological time, and humans work on industrial time. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. This story isn't over. We're doing the same thing right now, just faster. Species today aren't dying because they're weak. They're dying because the world is changing faster than biology can keep up. The dodo didn't fail. Evolution didn't fail. Nature didn't fail. The rules changed. The most tragic part? The dodo never understood what was happening. It never evolved fear. It never learned to hide. It never ran. It just kept living until there were none left. And that's the real horror of extinction. It doesn't feel dramatic to the species going through it. It feels like normal life until it suddenly ends. Climate doesn't just shape ecosystems. Invasive species don't just change food webs. Humans don't just modify environments. They define the upper and lower limits of what life is even allowed to exist. The dodo was a creature that should never, ever have existed. It was too trusting, too slow, too gentle, too dependent on a world that was always destined to change. But for a brief moment in Earth's history, all the conditions aligned perfectly. And for millions of years, the dodo thrived. Then just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, leaving behind only bones and a warning we still haven't learned from. See, asking for support always feels a little awkward. So I'll keep this brief. Creating these videos is a labor of love. That's why I want to push the boundaries of what this channel can be. Richer visuals, deeper research, stories that don't just inform, but actually change how you see the world. But quality takes time, and it's hard to do this alone. So like the video and subscribe the channel. And until next time, you can watch this video here. I think you'll love it.